Further relaxation of social distancing measures as pandemic stabilizes. Leave Home Safe app for multiple persons comes into use today. Government raises the minimum wage for foreign domestic helpers. Good evening. Continuing the pandemic's recent stabilizing trend, today's coronavirus infections fell to 4,023 new cases. This afternoon, the government announced a further relaxation of social distancing measures, including raising the diner cap from 8 to 12, which takes effect on Thursday.
We understand that as a Hong Kong citizen, we all want to actually have a more relaxed social distancing criteria. Actually, we won't want to get back to quite a normal life, yet we still need to do it step by step carefully.
As the pandemic continues to stabilize, Hong Kong is gradually moving towards normalcy, and the latest changes are about to take place on October 6th. The cap on restaurant diners per table will be increased to 12 from 8. Currently, at most 4 patrons are allowed at each table in bars, pubs and nightclubs. Starting next Thursday, the maximum number will be 6. The cap on attendance allowed in banquets will be increased to 240 from 120. Still, a mandatory negative RAT result will remain for diners who will be seated in tables with at least 8 people. Also, groups of 12 will be allowed in gyms, beauty parlors and karaoke bars. The suspension mechanism on cruise to nowhere has also been lifted. The government is looking at the possibility of further relaxing the mask-wearing rule.
At this moment, for outdoor activities, if you are doing sports activities, you actually can take off your mask. But if you want to take a picture at the outdoor, still under the current situation, it is not allowed. We would like to review this, and hopefully it can be, at some stages, can relax as well, if the whole conditions in Hong Kong is actually under control.
Meanwhile, the hospital authority said the isolation facility at the Asia World Expo will be on standby starting today. Hospital beds in the North Lantau Infection Control Center will gradually reduce. Hospital beds that were previously reserved for COVID patients will soon be admitting more non-COVID patients. This after authorities observed a drop in the daily number of patients being admitted to hospitals. It comes as the city reported 3,810 new locally transmitted COVID cases. There were 213 imported cases. Infections were reported in 316 schools, and 4 individual classes have to be suspended for a week. 7 care homes for the elderly and the disabled identified outbreaks. Different sectors in Hong Kong welcomed the further relaxation on anti-COVID measures announced today. Some eatery groups said they have already received inquiries from customers to revise their bookings after the government announced that the maximum number of diners can be increased to 12 from 8. But the eateries added that a further relaxation, such as extending the business hours of bars and allowing live performances, is needed if the city aims to restore normality. Meanwhile, the tourism sector welcomed the government's scrapping of the suspension mechanism imposed on the cruise industry, saying this will attract cruise companies to return to Hong Kong.
This will be a very good direction to show to all the other cruise companies that they are welcome to come back to Hong Kong. Since Hong Kong, we have a very good cruise terminal, and we are providing a lot of opportunity. I hope they got the message. They can start planning the cruise trip for next year, to including Hong Kong as a port. They will arrive here.
Starting today, the vaccination pass scheme has widened its scope to incorporate children between the ages of 5 and 11. However, some parents had trouble accessing their own vaccination passes after installing their children's passes on the Leave Home Safe app. Timothy Lee tells us more.
A family outing at a pizza restaurant screams happiness and joy. But Mr. Chan and his 2 daughters did not expect that a problem with his children's vaccination passes would spoil the occasion. Despite being double jabbed, the daughters' passes displayed an icon preventing them from entering the eatery. Mr. Chan said his family has already planned some tutoring courses for his daughters, but he fears that the vaccination passes problems may mean his children might be unable to enter some locations. Beginning today, children from the ages of 5 to 11 are required to have received at least their first jab within 3 months' time in order to comply with vaccination pass requirements for entering specified premises. Aware of the fact that many children do not have access to a personal mobile phone, authorities permitted the youngsters' vaccination passes to be installed on their parents' phones. However, some parents seem to struggle with the newest changes to the contact tracing app. This woman had trouble finding her own vaccination pass after adding her son's. She noted that while it was easy to submit additions onto the list of vaccination passes on her phone, the process of retrieving her own information was confusing. But others were happy with the changes. This mother said the new measure has given her much more convenience, as her 2 sons no longer need to personally show their own documents when entering restaurants or malls. Dr. Mike Kwan from the University of Hong Kong's Department of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine believed that if the new measures help motivate more children to get vaccinated, the government may consider further lowering the vaccine passes age threshold. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Sources say 300 civil servants have abused the bogus COVID vaccine exemption certificates suspected to have been issued by one of the 7 doctors arrested by the police. The Civil Service Bureau said it is reviewing the vaccination proof submitted by its employees. It added the fraudulent passes will be invalid starting October 12. That means employees who use them will be barred from entering government premises. A lawmaker has asked the police to investigate the matter.
We urge the government to treat these incidents very seriously. Civil servant using fake information and fake vaccination pass is a very serious crime. So I think it hurts the government image. I believe this is only a very few civil servants.
The government announced that the minimum allowable wage for foreign domestic helpers will be raised by 2.2%, from a monthly wage of $4,630 to $4,730. Timothy Lee again.
Foreign domestic helpers across Hong Kong are about to see a salary boost, just days after the Philippines Consul General spoke with TVB News about a need for the maids to get a pay increase. The Labor Department announced today that the helpers' wages will increase by 2.2%, from $4,630 to $4,730. According to the standard employment contract, employers must also provide free meals for the maids. However, as the vast majority of employers in the city choose to grant a food allowance instead, the minimum allowance will increase from $1,173 to $1,196 per month, an increase of $23. The new levels of the minimum allowable wage and food allowance will apply to all foreign domestic helpers contracts signed on or after tomorrow, October 1st. Authorities noted that the minimum allowable wage for foreign domestic helpers are reviewed regularly, and that their decision was only made after a careful consideration of the city's general economic and labor market situation. The foreign domestic helper contracts signed today or before at the existing minimum allowable wage of $4,630 per month will still be processed by the Immigration Department. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Overseas, during a 2-day White House summit, U.S. President Joe Biden told visiting leaders of Pacific Island countries that Washington is committed to bolstering its presence in their region and becoming a more collaborative partner. This comes as the Biden administration unveiled its Pacific strategy. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Leaders from more than a dozen Pacific Island countries, including Fiji, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands and Tonga, attended the 2-day summit in Washington, D.C. U.S. President Joe Biden told his Pacific counterparts that Washington is seeking to bolster ties with the region.
A great deal of the history of our world is going to be written in the Indo-Pacific over the coming years and decades, and the Pacific Islands are a critical voice in shaping that future.
Biden delivered his remarks as his administration unveiled its Pacific strategy, which includes plans to ask Congress to appropriate $600 million over the next decade to support the region's economic and other developments. Washington is also looking to expand the number of U.S. diplomatic missions from 6 to 9 across the Pacific. The Biden administration's strategy also calls for increasing the presence of the U.S. Coast Guard, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the Pentagon in the Pacific. The U.S. Pacific strategy in a 16-page document outlined what it called heightened geopolitical competition impacts for the Pacific Island countries that also directly affect the United States. This with Washington having expressed concern about China's recent strides in bolstering diplomatic and economic relations with Pacific nations. In response, the Foreign Ministry said China never engages in economic coercion, adding that in its cooperation with the Pacific Island countries, Beijing always insists that all countries are equal. The ministry added that China's cooperation fully respects the sovereignty and will of Pacific Island countries, with no political strings attached. Daniel Roll, TVB News.
Still to come on tonight's news, President Xi Jinping attends ceremony to honor fallen heroes. Joe Biden condemns Russian move to annex Ukraine territory. And a new coin featuring King Charles III. Welcome back. President Xi Jinping and other leaders of the Communist Party of China paid tributes to fallen national heroes on China's Martyrs' Day. The ceremony was held this morning at the Tiananmen Square in Beijing. President Xi Jinping and 7 Politburo members attended the ceremony. They first paid a silent tribute. This year, there were children singing a patriotic song in the ceremony. Honor guards then laid flower baskets in front of the monument to the people's heroes. Xi straightened the red ribbons on the baskets and led a group of senior officials in a walk around the monument to pay tribute. In 2014, China's National People's Congress designated September the 30th as Martyrs' Day to commemorate those who sacrificed their lives for national independence and prosperity. Here at home, the city's only drink carton recycler was offered a 6-month lease extension by the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation. However, the recycler criticized the government-owned landlord for its lack of sincerity in handling the issue. Christy Khan reports.
The Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation, which is fully owned by the government, announced that they will only extend the lease with Miu Miu, the city's only drink carton recycler, for 6 months, saying the decision was made after holding discussions with the Environment and Ecology Bureau. The recycler was earlier informed that they would have to move out of their current location at Yuen Long Industrial Estate by December. Secretary for Environment and Ecology Xi Jinping today spoke on a radio program and said the Bureau will keep looking for suitable sites for Miu Miu's relocation. Additionally, he said the authorities hoped the drink carton recycler could continue their operations in Hong Kong. But the government alternatively will search for other potential contractors if Miu Miu decides to cease operations before the Tuen Mun Eco Park begins its service in 2025. The co-founder of Miu Miu, Harold Ip, in response, said that the recycling factory will continue its operation until the last second. He added that Miu Miu will keep collected cartons in storage until they restart operations after relocation. Yip criticized the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation for its lack of sincerity, noting that the announced extension period is the same as what the corporation earlier proposed. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Hong Kong residents will receive their new round of consumption vouchers tomorrow. Residents who registered for e-vouchers with designated e-payment methods, except for Octopus cards, can collect their remaining $3,000 vouchers in one go. Octopus card users, however, will receive their e-vouchers in phases, meaning they will only receive $2,000 vouchers tomorrow. They can collect the balance $1,000 after meeting the eligible spending mark by December 16th. Separately, residents can spend e-vouchers on buying flight tickets and hotel accommodation via local travel agencies. Elsewhere, later tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to sign decrees that would officially annex 4 regions of eastern Ukraine into the Russian Federation. Nazvi Karim reports.
These ambulances in Zaporizhia are racing towards the scene of yet another deadly attack, which officials say killed 23 people. Ukraine authorities are blaming the strike on Russia, though Moscow did not immediately acknowledge the attack. But these very streets and those in 3 other regions of eastern Ukraine are now the focus of the 7-month war between Russia and Ukraine. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to preside over a signing ceremony at the Grand Kremlin Palace that would absorb Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk into the Russian Federation. This after referendums dismissed as a sham by several Western countries showed the majority of people in those 4 regions choosing to be part of Russia. Putin's latest move counts as a major escalation in the war, effectively saying that any Ukraine military activity in those 4 regions represents an attack on Russian territory. Condemnation was led by US President Joe Biden.
The United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory. This so-called referenda was a sham, an absolute sham. The results were manufactured in Moscow. And the true will of the Ukrainian people is evident every day as they sacrifice their lives to save their people and maintain the independence of their country.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is considered among the favorites for the Nobel Peace Prize on October 7, called on Russian citizens to stop Putin. He said Putin cares more about war than he does about the lives of Russians. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Russia's actions goes against the UN Charter.
Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
As Zaporizhia countered the cost of the latest attack, top leaders from the Czech Republic, Denmark, Germany and Japan condemned Russia's move, while Moscow-friendly Turkish leader Tayyip Erdogan called on Putin to give negotiations another chance. The US and Albania have sponsored a resolution for the UN Security Council to not recognize the annexation, which Russia would veto. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Britain's Royal Mint has unveiled the first coins to feature the portrait of King Charles III following the end of the official period of mourning for his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. The 50-pence coins depicting King Charles will gradually enter circulation from this December. There's also a £5 commemorative coin featuring King Charles. The King's portrait faces to the left, the opposite direction to the Queen's. Charles is depicted without a crown, surrounded by a Latin inscription that translates to King Charles III, by the grace of God, defender of the faith. A separate memorial £5 coin for the late Queen will be also released on Monday. Meanwhile, hundreds queued outside Windsor Castle to be among the first to visit the grave of Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen's tomb is inside the King George VI Memorial Chapel, part of St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. According to a YouGov poll, Britain's opposition Labour Party has surged to a 33-point lead over the ruling Conservatives. This is the largest gap ever recorded in any published survey since the 1990s. The findings come after the Conservative government's so-called mini-budget triggered turmoil in financial markets. However, British Prime Minister Liz Truss continued to defend the controversial plan.
I understand that people are facing a difficult time. We're facing a global economic crisis caused by Putin's war in Ukraine. That's why the government has taken decisive action to help people with energy bills. If we hadn't acted, people would be facing bills of up to £6,000, higher inflation, and also a slowing economy. But also, we need to get the economy growing, and that is an important priority. That's why we're reducing the tax burden.
Truss spoke after the Bank of England took emergency action to stabilise UK financial markets. The BOE said it would buy up to £65 billion in long-term government bonds over the next 2 weeks to counter dysfunction in the bond market. Analysts say the Conservative government must move to restore confidence in markets. In the US, possibly the strongest ever hurricane to hit Florida has caused widespread damage. President Joe Biden said there could be casualties, but the exact numbers are not clear. This report from NBC News.
Tonight, our first look at Ian's astonishing trail of destruction. Entire neighborhoods flattened, homes still smoldering, people's possessions and livelihoods strewn across the beach.
Our community has been in some respects, decimated.
This is what's left on Sanibel Island: shredded buildings, ripped off foundations, the causeway partially washed away by Ian's winds, and a wall of water. The island of 6,000 people now cut off.
It got hit with really biblical storm surge, and it washed away roads, it washed away structures that were not new and could withstand that.
Now the urgent search and rescue efforts to reach those still in danger. Officials evacuating nursing home residents in Orlando on stretchers.
Are you guys okay?
In Naples, first responders helping this woman wade through chest-deep water. This elderly man rescued from his car. Others could only be reached by boat, including Juanazera Thomas.
We came out. As soon as we opened the door, all the water just rushed in the house.
Water so high, Florida's governor calling it a 500-year flooding event. There are countless neighborhoods across the region that look just like this, flooded everywhere. The only way to get anywhere is to walk through the water.
Everything is gone, basically.
I met 14-year-old Juan Garcia near Fort Myers Beach. He was hunkering down at home when the storm struck.
Next thing you know, the water's in the house, and it's rising and rising, and it won't stop. So all of us, we grabbed like our stuff that we needed, like our phones and stuff, and all of us climbed all the way up there.
They spent 3 hours on their roof, whipped by cold rain and fierce winds.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.